One of the big changes that's coming to Medicaid and food stamps pretty soon as a result of the big Republican federal budget that just passed is work requirements. Work requirements are kind of what they sound like. They say that for any working age person to receive public assistance like Medicaid or food stamps, they have to be either working a job or in school. Now, that sounds like a pretty simple policy, but actually it works very differently in the real world than a lot of people think. Supporters of work requirements say they're needed because too many people are choosing to not get a job so that they can see a doctor for free. The problem is that that's not something you see in the real world data. In real life, the single biggest group of Medicaid recipients by far are children. Of working age people, most of them are already working or they're disabled. Only about 3% of Medicaid recipients overall are not disabled and working age and not working. There are also a lot of legitimate reasons people have for not working, like you're taking care of kids or a sick family member or a million other things. We have a very good idea of what national work requirements are going to do to the number of Medicaid recipients because they've already been tried in Georgia and Arkansas. Here's what happened. Back in 2018, Arkansas passed work requirements rules for Medicaid, and they were in place for almost a year before getting blocked by a federal court. And what they found during that time was that work requirements did not have a significant effect on employment because, again, most people were already working, but they did succeed in kicking tens of thousands of very low-income people off their healthcare coverage, mostly because those people couldn't collect the work documentation required, or they didn't know they needed it, or they just couldn't figure out how to navigate the system. Georgia is the only state in the country with an active work requirement rule for Medicaid today, and their program has been a disaster. Georgia's work requirements program cost Georgia taxpayers $86 million to set up and run, the vast majority of which went to consultants because the state couldn't hire enough people to run the program. Sounds familiar to us in North Carolina. And the vast majority of eligible people who applied in that program were denied because they couldn't figure out the paperwork. Work requirements actually cost Georgia taxpayers more than they saved, and they covered a small fraction of the people. Work requirements are a form of a paperwork burden that some policymakers use to deliberately keep people away from accessing benefits that they are eligible for. They know that not everyone's going to be able to navigate a complicated online portal multiple times a year and keep track of all the paperwork. And the more complicated they can make it, the fewer people will complete it. And maybe the taxpayer saves a couple bucks, but only because another eligible person can't see a doctor because they lost a form.